Hey guys, welcome back to the Called to Build podcast. My name is Ashley Morgan Jackson and I am your host. And I just want to talk a little bit today about judgment. Oh yes, judgment. Isn't it one of our favorite topics? Because a lot of us, if you're like me at all, you probably fear the judgment of other people. And this is why I want to talk about it, because the Bible does address this, and I just want to share a few things that the Lord really taught me a few years ago that I'm still working on, and I thought maybe it could help you as well, because the truth is that we kind of are set up in our humanity to judge at all times. Part of it is to simply keep us safe. We're judging, is this a safe situation or not? Is this right? Is this wrong? And there are instances in the Bible where it tells us that, for instance, we need to judge someone by their fruit. Don't necessarily just take their word that they're a believer. They just say they're a believer, but you judge them by their fruit. But the kind of judgment that I want to talk about today is where the Lord says not to judge. And I think you hear that a lot in our society. And it's a way of sometimes saying, you can't judge me, only God can judge me. And basically they're saying, don't even look at my fruit. Don't look at my fruit and tell me that I'm not living for the Lord. But that's not what I'm talking about in this episode. This kind of judgment is the kind that's actually crippling us as the people of God. And in a society where we kind of live online, we live our regular lives, but we also live online. And I don't know about you guys, but the things that I see that people say online, man, they're not the things that you would ever actually see someone say to someone's face in real life, if that makes sense. And it's also a place where we can entertain our thoughts about others, because we can base our perceptions on them based around what we see or what we perceive about them. And it's not always true. And I think that when I was really coming out of depression, one of the things that the Lord really was teaching me was how to take my thoughts captive and make them obey Him. And one of the, main indicators in my depression was my self-hatred. And really, everybody seemed to be against me. I don't know how else to say it. It felt like the world was against me. It felt like everyone was writing a awful story about me in their heads, and I was there to defend myself. Like my whole job, it felt like in life, was to defend myself. I felt as though everyone was there to tell me how awful I was. None of that was true. Even if people did think I was awful and crazy and whatever else I was telling myself, no one ever came up to me and said, hey, Ashley, I really think you're awful and crazy and the worst. So I was imagining those thought bubbles above their heads. And because I felt awful about myself, then I villainized them much of the time. And a lot of the times it was my family, people who I really wanted to be there for me, and that I was kind of figuring they weren't being there for me, but also just complete strangers. And so as the Lord was telling me, look, you have to think about what you're thinking about. You have to take your thoughts captive. He began to show me how crazy my mind would be. And the truth is that I wanted to keep myself safe, okay? So I feel like you guys are going to relate to this so much. I feel like that there is a part of us that thinks if we can think the absolute worst thoughts about us first, then we are not surprised when other people think those thoughts about us or might say those things. It's like, yeah. I've already gone through everything that's wrong with me 500 times. Like, you are not going to hurt me with your commentary on my life, right? And a lot of that had to do with like my body image. But the truth is that I would, as well as the Lord started revealing this to me, he started showing me that I, in my defense mechanism, state of being, was judging my entire world at all times, in a mean way. Not just in a protecting myself way, not in a just, this person is driving on this side of the road and this, in that kind of judgment kind of way, a judgment call, so to speak. But I am judging your intentions. I am judging your heart. I am judging what you're thinking without knowing it, or just judging you as you are a good or bad person, a smart or stupid person, a holy or an unholy person, based simply on what I am seeing. And the Lord was like, let me tell you why you don't want to do that. And I had no clue that this was the case, okay? He was showing me that in my wanting to keep myself safe from the opinions of others, I would let myself judge people like that. But in living in that constant state of that I was the judge and the jury. You're bad, you're good. You're right, you're wrong. You're ugly, you're not. You're skinny, you're fat. Whatever the case may be, I was going around. I was the one that was going to basically decide for myself whether someone was acceptable, really, or not, based on my opinions, because the bottom line was half the people I didn't even know. Let's be honest. I mean, the people we see in the streets, we don't know them. The people we judge online, we don't know them. And so it's based on a very limited amount of knowledge. And he said, Ashley, the more that you do that to other people, the more that you will live in fear that is how other people view you. Because you do it to others, so why wouldn't others be doing that to you? And it really just blew my mind. Wait a second here. Okay, like part of the reason that I am fearing other people's judgment and them being so mean to me, like I was so afraid of their mean thoughts in their heads, was because I was so mean, not only to other people, but to myself. And this is where he started, saying, Ashley, you got to take those thoughts captive. And I want you, as much as possible, to think the best about other people first. To give people the benefit of the doubt rather than this harsh, critical, mean spirit, because it was coming back and biting me, right? Like I don't even know what I thought, because really at the end of the day, it's just mean. But I think it's self-preservation, and we're trying to keep a wall up to keep ourselves protected and really make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Where it's like, well, if I can judge her as a bad mom because of this, and this that I saw on social media, then I feel a little bit better about myself, because there's 100 other posts that we're looking at thinking, wow, they're the best mom ever, and I know myself and I am the worst. So whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's both detrimental to us, because we are, in essence, in constant comparison, and we don't know what to do with those feelings and with those emotions. And so what we end up fearing it, because, well, if we're doing it to others, why wouldn't they be doing it to us? And I remember when the Lord started dealing with this in me, I walked out of my apartment and I saw a girl wearing something that I wanted to judge her for. You guys know what I'm talking about. And the Lord pulled me up in that instant and was like, nope, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Why do you need to make that judgment in your heart about her? Why? Stop. Make a different choice. And she had no idea any of this was going on, but the Lord really started to deal with this in me. And really, I mean, I'm not saying that I, these many years later am 100% recovered. You know what I mean? Like it's still such a battle because we are set up in our society to be constantly judging. Like, do we like this or do we not like this? I mean, there's a literal button sitting there. Like, I can be mad at this. I can give it an angry face. I can give it a heart. I can really like it. I can kind of like it. And that's what we do all day long on our social media, right? And yet the Lord says in his word, and I just want to read these verses in Matthew 7:1 in their simplicity, just judge not that you might not be judged. And then it goes on and says, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with the measure you use, it shall be measured to you. And this is, I think, what the Lord was trying to show me, is that if we want mercy and grace and love and acceptance and really just beauty, we can't think that we're going to go around like doling out a bunch of mean-spirited hatred in our hearts, trying to protect ourselves, and then get back anything than what we're giving. And with the measure that we use for others will be the measure used for us. And I think sometimes a lot of the things that we might be coming across in our lives, like, oh, this hurts, this hurts. And sometimes I have to stop and say, okay, like, where did I use this measure with someone? And I think apparently I have just recently found out that my personality is a personality that feels misunderstood a lot. So what comes up is, what are we going to do with what is in our hearts? And I feel sometimes that the Lord is really teaching me. I mean, he's taught this to me before, but I'm telling you guys, if you are called to build God's kingdom in any kind of way where you're going to communicate to other your thoughts and opinions and based around, what you're sharing, I don't know, anything that's kind of just out there, right? People are going to judge you. Like, it's just a fact. It's going to happen. I can't tell you how many things that I've just seen since working at Proverbs 31 of people that want to share their critical and mean opinions all the time. So it's not going to go away. But we can't control what other people do. But we can control ourselves. And honestly, it's the peace that we carry within ourselves that matters the most. And it's that peace that comes from the Lord that a broken and hurting world desperately needs. We don't need to run around ministering out of our own brokenness. We need to obey the Lord in these tiny little details, because those tiny little details actually end up making the biggest impact. And I went through a season where the Lord was really teaching me about meekness. I might have talked about this before, but it was basically this idea, like, meekness is not weakness. Meekness is not timidity. You know who really displayed meekness profoundly was when Jesus stood before those who were accusing him right before his death and said nothing. Like, he could have called the angels to come and prove him who he was didn't change because he didn't do that. He just chose to restrain what he could say and what he could do because he wanted God to do it for him. And if that had to come at a later date, then he was going to be okay with that. And this is something that as we work through this judgment thing, that it's not going to stop other people from judging us. And this laying down our right to have to defend ourselves, or sometimes, honestly, if we feel judged, my defense is, I'm going to judge you back, even if it's just in my own heart, and I feel like I struggled with that even this last week I'm very sensitive to people's motives and very perceptive in that kind of way. And I don't know if that's like a gift of the Spirit or just like my hypersensitivity, or I don't know what it is, but I like old Ashley, right? The flesh version of me that I'm constantly like telling to get down wants to get on Instagram and say things, or, I want to write something back to someone and say, do you know that this is hurtful? But instead the Lord challenges me over and over again. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can control yours. Like, you just get down, get low, get in my presence, be submissive and surrendered to me, and let me defend you because I'm better at it. He's always better at it than us. And so in a world that says, hey, speak your mind, tell people what's up, fight for your rights, give your opinions, I think sometimes the Lord's saying, no, be quiet. Let me defend you. Let me show them in the right time if that's what I want. Let me do the work that I'm doing in them. Don't get into the mud that they're flinging with them. No, you come higher and you live and you stay in peace. Because the minute we enter into that and get into that in a way of wanting to defend ourselves, the peace is out the door. I don't care who you are. I don't care how strong you are. If you enter into that and now your guts are now in the battle, and sometimes if it's godly and it's worth the battle, then God will show you that. Sometimes he calls us to fight. Sometimes he calls us to stand. And sometimes he calls us to just get out of the way because he wants to take care of it, And there are times, listen, if you are going to communicate, be a communicator of truth and sending a message out on social media especially, I challenge you and I challenge myself to never write a post in response to being triggered by anything, whether we're feeling like we're being judged, whether we're feeling like this was unfair. Our job as Christian communicators, especially over the internet, is to bring truth. No doubt sometimes lies need to be challenged. And I am the first one. And I think that's why I have to keep this in check a lot of the times, you guys, because I am a fighter. I am a fighter. And I actually get a little bit excited about a fight. And so that's my flesh though. My flesh went like, come on, bring it. Come on, let's go throw down right now. Okay. So the Lord is constantly like, okay, reel it back in. No, we're not doing like Peter, put your sword away. We don't need you to be slashing ears for me. I got this. And I think sometimes we think it's our job to slice ears, so to speak. And it hurts us when people do that. Yes, but let's take our hurt to Jesus, not to the internet. And I made some kind of inner vow at some point along this way of when I'm sharing on Instagram. And I just want to put that challenge out to all of us, that let's not share from our places of triggered insecurity. Because it's not even about ministering to other people at that point. It's about other people getting on our side, being like, yeah, that's right. And we're not coming, like, we know, if we're writing posts that we are trying to passive aggressively say something to somebody else, that something we saw, like, what is happening? No, like, we can't do that. We have to say, I am struggling with this and I'm going to take it to the Lord. Go get your journal and you tell on her to the Lord. Say, like, Lord, this, and I'm telling you guys, this morning I was feeling so broken over feeling misunderstood, because I don't want to feel misunderstood. I want people to believe my heart and see my heart and trust my heart and know that I just love Jesus so much. And yes, I make mistakes, but I just want people to walk with him, and I want them to be free, and I don't want to be misunderstood. But my flesh wants to defend myself. My flesh wants to judge other people. And because when we are in that place of pain, it hurts so bad. And that sometimes that's how we grew up, right? When we feel pain, we cause pain. And that we grew up in like a fighting family, maybe. Now we're in a fighting culture. It's a part of what we have been trained to do. That is our response, but that is not the response that the Lord's calling us to. And he's saying, to the measure that you use with others is the measure that's going to be used to you. And so let's measure. Let that measure be mercy, because there's going to come a day when I'm going to desperately need mercy. And I want to be that measure to be measured to me, And so let's stop ourselves. If we're feeling that way, if we're feeling like someone has offended to us, like, you guys, find that place where you can grieve it in front of the Lord. Grieving it in front of everybody else online, that is not the place. Those people cannot give you what Jesus can give you. We want them to. We want people to come around us and say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we got your back. Yeah, whatever the case may be. But that's not what builds the kingdom of God. We don't need teams. We don't need sides. We need surrender. I was thinking about this today, and the Lord saying, pick up your cross and follow me, right? And some people think, we all have our cross to bear, and, what is your cross to bear? Maybe it's a health issue, whatever. But I was reading the commentary, and this is what I really thought. Jesus carried his cross on his way to die. It was a device of bringing death. And so when Jesus was saying, carry your cross, it's like we die to ourselves. And we die to our rights. And there's a Lauren Daigle song, and the Lord, I would listen to her CD and drive around. I feel like the Lord does that a lot with me. I just drive around and listen to this song. And there's a part that says, oh, let this be where I die, my Lord with thee crucified. Be lifted high as my kingdoms fall once and for all. And I just was saying that to the Lord over and over again today, like this, I am not the king. This is not my kingdom. I am not the king. This is not my kingdom. Because, guys, when Jesus calls us to die, dying is painful. Dying to our flesh that wants to judge people back or just judge people in general, because judging feels good. If we're honest, judging people feels good. It helps us feel like we know where our place is. It helps us feel better about ourselves. It helps us feel safe in some way. But that is our kingdom. That is our flesh. And the Lord's saying, no, die to that. Die. because we don't just get to keep the things that feel good because they feel good to us. And that's our constant life, this working out our salvation with fear and trembling is to say again and again, we are the living sacrifice. We crawl up there again and say, I'm putting you to death today. You want to judge? No, you're not going to judge. You want to be mean? No, you're not going to be mean. You want to think awful thoughts about yourself? No, you're not. The other day I was in a church service and he was talking about our self-talk and about how we think like, well, what do I have to offer? And this and that. And he's like, stop that. That is not kingdom-minded thinking. You cannot think it. And I was like, yes, come on. Because that is so true. How we put up with stuff that the Lord is saying, no, that stuff is supposed to be dead with your flesh. Get it on the cross. Carry that cross. Let it be death to my plans, death to my way of living, death to the way that I think. If it is not the way that Christ is asking us to think and live and breathe and move and be, it's got to die. And dying is painful. But what came on the other side of that death? Right? When Jesus went to the cross and was crucified. We die to our flesh so that we can live in him. We want that resurrection life coming out of us. That's the good stuff right there. And we want the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the God over all, to be our defender. Because God is a God of justice. No one loves justice more than our God. And I'm going to tell you from personal experience, if you will take that pain and you will lay it at his feet and say, Lord, this is what people are saying, this is what I think people are thinking, whatever it is, like we just lay it down. He has a way, you guys, of saying you didn't defend yourself, so now I will show them in front of you. And that's sometimes not always how he does it, but sometimes it is. So let's think about what we're thinking about. If we are fearing the judgment of other people, let's stop and think like, how is my judgment in my heart going towards other people? Because maybe I need to check myself and see what measure am I using towards others. Because even if it's a perceived measure that other people are using against me, maybe I can be kinder to myself in my own mind. And then I just perceive that other people are being kind to me as well. There's a lot of digging and uprooting that we need to let the Lord do in our hearts. And it all starts with saying, Lord, show me how I can be more like Jesus. Let your word transform my life and let me figure out by surrendering how my flesh can die again and again and again. So thank you guys for being here, and I will talk to you next week. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the Call to Build podcast today. We would love for you to stop over at Instagram at Call to Build and follow us there. You can also follow me at ashley.morgan.jackson on my Instagram, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks guys, bye.